Hi, everybody, and welcome to Be Moved, the first interview I'm doing in this series about how we get changed from the inside, inevitable change from the inside out. And my first guest today is a great friend and actually also a mentor of mine. Her name is Savannah Alalia. I'd like to begin with how I met you. Right. Can we go back to Thailand?
Absolutely. But first of all, thank you so much for having me. I can't tell you how excited I am to be joining you with this, gorgeous. You are such a delight in this world. And so I'm thrilled to see you launching into this space and exploring some really important questions, because you just bring such vitality to everything that you do. So it's truly an honor to be here with you. So thank you. So,
yeah, wow.
Go for it with the story, because I love a bit of a story.
Yeah. So can we go back to Thailand?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, let's go to Thailand together for a moment, to a small smoothie stand on the outskirts of the fort of Chiang Mai. And I remember you were drinking something that was made of fruit, and I was drinking something that was made of fruit. And I remember talking to you, and there was a look in your eyes when we were talking about food that was something I'd never encountered before. I was someone that had struggled with an eating disorder for many, many years. And I remember talking to you about chocolate or something, and you looked at me and you said, well, what are you desiring in the chocolate? What do you feel like you really need? And it struck me, because it was as if you were implying that I wasn't bad. You had started to break apart the feeling that many of us have when we are trying to improve, but we are stuck, and all we can feel like we're stuck in is a negative habit. So absolutely. I'd love for you to talk a little bit actually about your relationship. Can we start with food? Can we just start where we began? Let's start with food.
Yeah, let's follow the trail. Yeah, gosh, that's such a beautiful way of describing it. I really feel like our bodies are this incredible source of information for us. They're like this insanely perfect compass that if we were able to, or took time to, because I do believe we're able to, but if we took the time to really show up and be present to what our bodies ask for, we would be anything but upset with ourselves or feeling guilty about the cravings that we have with different things. And I think that's where that conversation came out of. One of the things that I discovered myself for my own body, and for a lot of the understanding that I gained around food, it was exploring it. Like I went and I tried lots of different types of cleanses and detoxes and diets, and I saw how I watched myself. I saw, okay, how do I feel when I eat this? And I began to notice over time that there was a real core thread, which was if I was craving something, there was something inside of the food that I was having that my body needed. And this was the question that I asked you about chocolate, because I think as women, and especially, when we're kind of just growing up, we're taught that chocolate's a treat and it's a little bit naughty, and you should feel guilty when you have it. Almost, it's like an indulgence, but actually it has trace elements of cacao in there, and cacao is like amazing in terms of how it balances hormones and how it makes you feel happy when you eat it, especially for women, for men too, but especially for women. Which is in part why a lot of women crave it before we have our periods, for example, because we're looking to balance our hormones. We also crave fat before we have our periods, because our womb is getting ready to prepare a space potentially to have a child. So that combination of fat and cacao, so that hormone balancer, and the cacao and the fat from the normally dairy, but if you begin to have some of the healthier cacao, there's good amounts of fat naturally in cacao. That was really what I was nudging into when we first started speaking. and learning to listen to the quiet voice within our own bodies that say to us, I'm after this. And if our body is asking for something that we know maybe does have a lot of sugar in, or maybe does have, I don't know, unhealthy fats or whatever, pausing long enough to check in with ourselves and say, well, what thing could I have that's similar to this, or is giving me the highest nutrient density of, the same substance? So for chocolate, it would be cacao. For fats, you could begin to look into like maybe avocados, or healthy nuts, or there's lots of things you could begin to explore if you know that that's particularly what you're craving. And then you'll start to notice, and this was what I found fascinating as I explored lots of different things. I mean, I've tried everything. So I've been an omnivore. I've drunk lots. I've drunk nothing in terms of alcohol. So I've had like long stints of abstinence, So I've tried lots of different things and saw and observed, how do I feel? Like, what are my energy levels like? And I observed, like, if I was craving fats and I ate healthy fats, I noticed I didn't need to eat A, as much because there was more nutrients in there, and B, I didn't crave the other stuff. And so it really was this trial and error process over, like, my goodness, like, well, I'm 37 now, so like maybe like 20 years in a professional capacity. But I was brought up vegetarian for the first 10 years of my life. So I tried a whole load of things at that stage already, and then I became a meat eater for a while. So I really have, explored lots of different avenues, and I think food is so emotionally linked to us and how we feel, and we often eat to comfort ourselves, but our body also does tell us what we actually need, and learning to listen to what that quiet voice inside of us is actually saying is something that is a huge passion of mine, because I believe that everybody's body will ask for exactly what it's after. It's something that is known as, I think they call it zoo pharmacology in animals. Like, if a dog feels sick, it wants to go and eat grass, so it naturally remedies itself. Whereas as human beings, we have learned to listen less to what our body's asking for, because we've forgotten how to hear what it's saying. We've forgotten how to listen to what it's asking for. And so for me, I have this huge excitement when it comes to helping people like touch back into that part of themselves. And it's a combination of just learning to listen through like moving your body. Like, it's one of the reasons I love the stuff that you do, because it's that awareness of how do you feel like you'd like your body to be moving, as an expression and interaction with music even, and that's a key listening tool even for how we digest. Like, everything, it's all interlinked. But also I really feel that it's important to kind of clean off your palate so that you can learn to distinctly notice what your body's asking for and what it's authentically craving. So that's, it's a combination of different things, as well as touching into some meditation stuff. So it's a huge, food is a great place to start, because I just get really excited about it, as you can see, because I'm chat. Anyway.
Yes, and I want to take a note, because as we were recording for our first interview, I think we transitioned from a wide screen where I was very small to now where we're even, which is a nice transition. So some of you may have noticed that. But I guess in this sense of creating an even playing ground within the self, right? Because sometimes when we're on a negative feedback loop, or we're like, well, I meet so many women who are like, I don't know how to stop, right? They could have the good information. They could even know how to meditate.
Because if you don't know how to stop, it's because there's something you're not getting. There's something your body's still asking for. Like, we judge ourselves so harshly, and we're like, oh, this is bad. Like, I need to stop. I shouldn't be doing this. Like, we have this chatter that goes on. But our food in the modern world we're living in, if you're buying from even if you're buying from health food shops, they're better, but like sometimes the nutrients just aren't in the food. So we can't stop because we need more of something that's in what we're having. We're craving substance, and we're not finding it. So instead of punishing ourselves, the questions we need to be asking ourselves is, well, if I sit with myself and I really check in, like, what am I really after? And how can I find that thing with what it is I'm really after? How can I find it, in the most delicious format? Because that's like super important. Like, being healthy is nothing to do with, like, you know, eating plain horrible food and that tastes like cardboard, that's unexciting. Like, it's important to have food that has vitality in it, so it has to taste delicious. And the best food always does, and it's normally simple as well. Like, it's not super complicated. Like, so how can it be delicious, but also how can I find the thing that will give me the best nutrients for what it is that I'm craving?
Well, I think I want to chime in right there, because I actually had no idea what you were talking about for so long, because we have talked about this for a little while. And as you know, right now I'm on a wheatgrass kick. Like, I have to do it every day because, you know, I know the reason you've mentioned you haven't done it is because wheatgrass, I guess, does have some trace.
Yeah, it's trace gluten stuff. Which
trace gluten.
We're like just not friends. I've played with it, and we're just not friends, me and gluten. So
right. So I mostly don't eat bread and gluten for other reasons, but I get so much out of wheatgrass because it has, you know, it's just pure sunlight. You can get 5 to 6 pounds worth of chlorophyll, which then easily turns into, it helps the bite make hemoglobin. And so I didn't really, until I started doing daily 2 shots of wheatgrass, which aren't the cheapest thing. I'm still paying, but I'm paying, it's like, it's a switch from a cup of coffee. It's $3.75 for 2 ounces where I live. And it's not very easily accessible to everyone either, because it's a big, heavy piece of equipment. And so I know that there are blocks to getting this particular supplement. We'll call it a supplement, but it's a food. And what I've noticed is that it is so much easier for me to drink water. It is so much easier for me to do my meditation. It is so much easier for me to cut out sugar, because my body was severely, as someone who is on the vegetarian side, lacking something. So I would need to replace it with other things or have more lethargy. And the moment I made this one, I'm going to say it. I'm going to say Sparkling Habit. I'm going to lay it down.
I'm loving it.
Because I know this is what you do, is a Sparkling Habit. Once I put one habit, then everything else started to change. And so I would love to lead into, so basically going from what's the one thing that then translates to a meaningful change. I would love to hear you talk about what a Sparkling Habit is, how people can select their magical thing, and give us a little in.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so I love how you've described that. And that's exactly what a sparkling habit is. So a sparkling habit is basically, it's a habit. It's something that's super small that you just add into your day that allows you to light up enough that then that carries you into your day that little bit brighter and that little bit more engaged with whatever it is that you're doing. That then just helps you make better choices, because you've taken that one small step towards, this is my best self. So for me, one of the hugest things and simplest things and easiest things that every single person can do is water. Like, we are so crazily dehydrated, and it's such an easy thing to do. It's just literally, like, I literally will get when I very first started doing it, I mean, now it's like second nature, but when I very first started doing it, I'd grab my phone and I just put an alarm on there for like every hour, and I would have myself drink like a good size, glass of water. And
here's a description. Tell me how.
So like, I would say like half a bottle of that.
Okay, just so people can see. Okay, so half of one of these.
Like
Okay.
a half bottle of that.
Okay.
And I would drink that within an hour. Like sometimes if I were thirstier, I'd have more. But other times I would have, I just drink it over the hour. So I just like stick it on my desk, or if I'm moving around, I'd have a bottle with me and I just, let it go down. And then I'd fill it up, or I'd get another one for the time that, like another glass, or I'd fill up the bottle for the time that I had next. And that's how I just got myself into the routine of drinking enough water. And it's like anything, like when you first start doing it, yes, you are going to go to the loo a little bit more. Yes, it's going to feel like an inconvenience, but you will notice quite quickly, even within the first few days, your like mental clarity will be better. You'll be a little bit calmer with how you're dealing with situations. You'll find your digestion's improved. It just begins to improve the function of your body in such a way that it can then be a better compass for you in life generally. So sparkling habits are those things that are small but consistent, that nudge you into the best part of yourself in terms of the next choice that you make in the day and the next activity that you do. So they're simple, but they are enormous in terms of where they take you in your life.
This is great. And I have, you put your finger on something, not literally, but your voice did, that implies that the earlier on in the day, or the earlier we begin these activities, the better.
Absolutely.
I've noticed this in my life as well. When I was in India, I noticed if I was, just on a trip doing lots of meditation and internal work, and I noticed when I took the time and first thing in the morning to do something that was helpful, whether it be a movement practice or a meditation practice, the rest of the day would start to work better. And I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Yes. I mean, I call them non-negotiables. Like, what are the things that you need to happen before you even embark on your day? Like, what are the things that nourish you, like center you, and feed you? And it doesn't have to be like, this is the other thing that keeps it sparkling. Like, it doesn't have to be exactly the same thing every single day in a particular routine that you just get really bored with. And it's important, in fact, that it's engaging and has vitality there for you. So what are your non-negotiables? Like, what are the things that feed you? So for me, one of my non-negotiables is meditation. It doesn't need to be a huge amount of time, although again, like with the food, I've experimented with it a lot. There have been times in my life where I've meditated for 10, 12 hours a day. There are other times when I've done no meditation. And this I've done over a consistent period of time to really see, okay, how do I feel? What happens in my life when I do this? What works? What doesn't work? And I kind of feel like now, for me personally, at least 45 minutes a day is a good number for me. But this is for what I do and how I work. For other people, like even 10, 15 minutes a day is going to make a huge difference. If 45 minutes is not a possibility for you. And again, same as what you're saying, like moving your body. Like for me, that's also a non-negotiable. Like I'll do a walk, or I'll do some stretching, or I'll do some yoga, or I'll do, I might maybe feel like a run, or I will mix it up depending on what I feel my body needs that day, and also what I know I'm going to be doing. Like if I know I'm going to be in front of my computer for, a longer period of time, I will break that day up with dance breaks. Because I know that it's so important for how my mind works and the quality of the thoughts and feelings of how I'm then transmitting that into writing or, editing something that's going to come through. And so I will consider my day, and I will look at what I know will help encourage me to move forward in that day. So yeah, I guess the core of it is always going to be listening to your body with nourishing it, listening to your body with moving it, then listening to, and when I say body, I'm just realizing this now at the moment as we're speaking, sorry Suzanne, I feel like the body is so much more than just like this meat vehicle for us. It's so also closely linked to emotion. And so it's not just, this is good for my body. It's also, how does my body feel? Like if I have a day, for example, where, I don't know, like the first day of my period, like normally the first day of my period, I really like to have some meditation time, but I also really like to move my body, but not in a fast, sort of over energetic way. For me, first day of my period, I need to move, but it needs to be like slow and open. So I might put on like some classical music or dance music that is, you know, not too sort of crazy. And I will move and stretch and explore my body based on that feeling. So the movement for me in the morning is not just about activity. It's also about, what am I feeling inspired about today? What do I need to do? What am I feeling inspired about today? And then I would also say, but this one goes for me personally, this is later in the day. I feel like I need to empty my mind last thing at night. So I will journal as well. So that's another non-negotiable for me, but it's not at the beginning of the day, it's at the end. So I will just write, even if it's a paragraph, I will just like literally blur into a journal mentally. I don't share it with anyone. I don't do anything with it. Sometimes surprising stuff gets uncovered for it, but what it also does is it kind of punctuates my day, closes my day, and then prepares me to be fresh when I go into the next day, so that I can then check in again, like, how am I feeling, and what is it that I need to get into in myself today.
I really resonate with what you talk about in regards to when we have a sparkling habit or a thing that we know we have to do, to allow for variability, right? That there is, so say if this would be reflecting, and I have my two fingers are up to show the amount of distance, or the amount, to basically have a spatial representation of what a habit could look like. So say it has a certain shape, like you take a certain shape, like a meditation pose, but that meditation time may vary.
Yes.
And I noticed that we can get hard on ourselves when we don't have, or when those things change, right? When we have change amidst our sparkling habits. Mm-hmm. And what I'm feeling really drawn to ask you about is that when we are trying to make the next leap, the next logical step, say we know we have a larger goal. Say you have a client that knows they need to stop smoking or quit coffee or go to bed earlier, and they have maybe a sparkling habit in place, like they're drinking water, they're taking some better supplements, but the big change is slower in coming. And I think this is what you're talking about with emotion, but I'm really curious about, as you're coaching people, because I know that's what you do as well, when you see that they just can't flip the next thing, like that letting go of coffee would be incredibly helpful for them, but it just can't go, right? What are some of the ways when you found that there are things that are, maybe you have some sparkling habits, but you have like a thing that's like stuck in you, you can't change? Yeah,
you really want to, but you can't. It's, again, it's the same thing. Like our habits, we can sometimes get so attached to our habits that we almost identify with them as part of who we are.
Right.
And we can feel that by letting go of a particular thing, maybe we're not going to be as fun, or we're not going to be as interesting, or it's going to mean that we're not going to function as well as we need to. There's always a reason that that there's a reluctance to let go of something, and it's usually a really valid reason, and that's important to recognize, because I think sometimes we get into our head, I need to give this thing up, this needs to go, but then there's another part of us that's saying, but I need this thing because this thing backs me up, this thing allows me to work harder, or this thing allows me to think faster, or whatever it is. And so we're in conflict with ourselves. We're in conflict with ourselves because there's part of us that goes, oh, I know I need to give this up, but I need it, but I need it, but I need to give it up, but I need it. And we fight internally. We waste so much energy in this conversation with ourselves, and punishing ourselves with it. So one thing that's really important when you're looking at creating a sparkling habit, or maybe shifting into a sparkling habit, is what I should say. Like this is the I know I need to shift into a sparkling habit. This is I really, really don't want to, because this is helping me with this particular thing, and I don't know how I'm going to function without it. That's really what you're speaking to. You're speaking to that part of you that's afraid of, I don't know what my life's going to be without this particular thing working in this way. So one of the things I suggest, first of all, is figuring out what this voice is, figuring out what it's saying and listening to it, like not ignoring it, but actually listening to it. And journaling is a great thing to do with this. Like you don't need to take a long time over it, but sit down for maybe 15 minutes and just, check in with yourself. Like, what's this habit that I know I should do? What's this? Why don't I want to let go of the habit that I have? Like, what is it that it's giving me? And then ask them, okay, how and where, it's the same thing. How and where can I find what this voice is saying down here? I need something that gives me energy. I need something that supports me in being able to think faster. How and where can I find these qualities in a different type of habit? Now that may be doing a little bit more exercise. That may be, I don't know, like for me, I used to drink 7 espressos a day. So I understand the concept of letting go of coffee. I haven't drunk coffee for like 12, no, gosh, it must be longer now. I haven't drunk coffee for maybe 15 years. And I don't need it. Like I have
not even a sip.
Not even a sip. Not even a sip.
No espresso in a dark chocolate, no chocolate covered espresso bean.
No, nothing like that.
Savannah, can I put some espresso dusting on top of your filet mignon? It's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen. I haven't done, and not because I'm like judgmental. I just noticed, like for me, it was a no. It was like what it did for my body and how my energy level was. It was like a credit card, and it was, drink now, pay later. And so it just, I took it out. And as soon as I took it out, like it took a little while, I'm not going to lie. Like when you change something and when you shift into a sparkling habit, you have a transition period and you need to be kind to yourself during that transition period. And that does not, however, kindness does not mean, oh, I'm just going to keep having a little bit of it again and again and again. Kindness means like, don't overbook yourself. Like really give yourself some space to process things. You're going through a transition, like don't try and just like power through it and ignore the fact that you're having feelings. Like let it out, because what I found phenomenal and why I'm such a huge advocate for listening to your body is that actually when you listen, it makes everything easier. Like everything. Like your creativity, your productivity, your writing, anything that you're working on, you will be you'll come off like so much smarter in terms of what you're able to get done, and you'll look like a super powered human. But only when you've given yourself the time you deserve to unravel whatever it is that you're trying to figure out. So like with coffee, we think it makes us faster. We think it makes us more efficient. And in the short term, it looks like it does. Just like if you're spending money on a credit card, it looks like you've got money. It looks like it's okay. It looks like it's easy. But the reality is you're going to have to pay the bill at the end of it all. And it's the same with coffee or I'm being a bit hard on coffee here just because we're using it as an example. But it is the same with coffee. Like the strain it puts on your adrenals, and to stay fast all the time, it's too much for the body. Like nothing in nature is fast all the time. We have a tree might, have a growth spurt where, it goes from having no leaves to spring and then summer and then all the leaves come out, but it's not, flourishing and blooming all year round. And we're the same. Like if we don't learn what our natural cycle is, and we just try and bloom all the time, we're pushing ourselves into a very unbalanced and unnatural state. And we forget that we are part nature, we're part wild. And that's something that needs to be, we need to be reminded of. So coming back to what we were saying, when you've got this habit that's like, I can't let go of this because I'm not going to be able to function in this particular way, and that way is just really important because this is how things have to be done, and if I don't get it done this way, then it's not going to work, and that panic and that frenzy that goes on. Start by asking what it is that it needs. We're using coffee as an example. So one thing I highly recommend, and there's a free recipe on my website if anybody's interested, is there's a, like matcha lattes are a great sidestep to coffee because it helps with a good quality caffeine, but it's also really clean and it doesn't put the same strain on the body that coffee does. And there are
matcha, like green powdered,
exactly,
green tea, powdered green tea.
Exactly. So you can sidestep into something that still answers this voice, still offers what this voice is after. But what you'll start to notice is that over time, this voice and this voice will begin to sound much more similar. So it's not about, like, a lot of people like to go cold turkey, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like, if you want to, fair enough. I personally think it's nicer to be a little kinder to the body and kind of reduce the amount of whatever it is that you're having, whether it be sugar or caffeine or alcohol or whatever, and then stop, just because otherwise the body panics, and then it has this huge adjustment process, and then you get really intense like detox headaches and all that sort of stuff, and it's not necessary for it to feel so icky if you do it in stages and over time. But hey, if you want to do it in a stronger way to start off with, that's fine. I notice though sometimes for the people who do it that way, they then have this association to, if they get stressed, they'll revert back to this voice because they haven't, made friends with those voices. So if they get stressed, they will revert to what they know rather than.
This is a huge thing that you're saying, comparing basically a desired state and a negative state. And what I'm really hearing you say is that when your body's saying, this is a nice segue into interpreting body signals 101 with Savannah, interpreting body signals. So when we have a negative thought, I should stop. We're going to use coffee for one more moment, even though it's not terrible for everybody in all capacities and all means, of course. But let's just say that you would like to reduce that particular thing, and that your body's already saying no for a reason. And what I think we get confused with is we have a no and a yes that have both really legitimate reasons.
Absolutely.
And so your suggestion around reducing and to tapering off and stopping until that negative voice can really have some time to chill out. Because perhaps you can have, there was a period of time where I would have coffee only on a Sunday, and I got to experience, this kind of a wonderful breakfast and a coffee. But what I started to realize in my life was even that for me would have too much of a high and low. And I wanted to actually start working on something different. So it wasn't about removing coffee, which I don't think is what it is. It's about monitoring the state inside of the body, which has nothing to do really with the external food or even habit or work environment. It's not the external thing. It's what I think you're more passionate about. It's the feeling inside. And then the habit is a second, or the thing that's put in the body or the environment that's drawn to is a secondary thing that's addressed.
Definitely. And what I would say with that though as well, just from experience and having worked with thousands of people with this as well, so this is not just my experience, but what other people have given me feedback around, is that when you when you take certain things out, and it's usually things that are either stimulants or things that are deep relaxants, like alcohol, for example. When you take those things out, you get to know you. Then when you begin to mix them back in, you get to see how you respond to those. And it's not because I am purist by any stretch of the imagination. When I say sparkling, I think a lot of people sometimes think, oh, crystal clean, squeaky clean, like nothing ever is, a little bit messy or a little bit, impure or whatever. It's nothing really to do with that. Sparkling means being at your fullest expression. And glowing from the inside out. And we can only really get into that place when we know ourselves. And the challenge with our modern day diet is that we don't ever get the time or take the time to know ourselves, because there are already so many socially accepted stimulants or relaxants that we are using them as this is how I wake up, this is how I calm down, this is how I wake up, this is how I calm down. So we're not even listening to what's happening inside of us. And so it's not that I'm hammering any of those things, because I think anything can be a medicine ultimately, actually. And it's actually, when I went to India and studied some Ayurveda, that's the biggest takeaway that I had, was that they use everything as a type of medicine, and with incredible results. So everything can be a medicine, but it's not a medicine if you don't know and you can't hear what it is that you need. And that's where I feel things like doing cleanses in a guided way, and in a way that is somebody who's coming from a kind and caring place with the cleanse process, rather than like, purge your body, get this rubbish out, and really kind of almost attacking you to clean up, which is not a great thing to do either, because you're not listening then to yourself. Again, you're like, oh, there's something wrong with me, like I've got to get this out and finished and gone. Like the cleanse process is about getting to know yourself, and taking out certain foods is about getting to know yourself, just as much as adding them then back in is about getting to know yourself. And you will do your own research. Each person will do their own research as to what works for them and what doesn't. But you can only really know when you step out of up, down, up, down, up, down, that we get from alcohol, coffee, which is so prevalent in how most people live their days. And there's, again, nothing wrong with any of those things, but it's just not all of who you are. You don't know yourself enough. You're only seeing one spectrum. That's the only thing I would add in there.
Yeah, and I think what we could also probably even say states of the mind, right?
Yeah, totally, absolutely.
So the things that lift us up and bring us down, that even those can be monitored, with a sense that, if I only know myself as successful if I do this, or if I only know myself as bad if I do this, sometimes there can be a limitation, we think, on who we are because of what we attach to. And so what I think what you're also implying is, when it comes to your meditation, your work with meditation, is when there's a clearing of the mind, which is like instead of a food detox, it's a thought detox.
Absolutely.
Right. Absolutely. So that's another way of getting to know yourself.
Absolutely. You're absolutely, you've hit the nail on the head there. That's exactly what it is. It's all, because mind stuff is all perception. As we know from, this is not new information. This is, the yogis of old have studied this. It's all about how you perceive the situation that you're in. But it's much easier to perceive the situation that you're in as an opportunity, as a potential growth space, or a potential like transformation that can take place when you're really present in your body, and when you really are calm enough and not, kind of being pushed into high levels of caffeine and then dipping into alcohol. Again, I'm not judging it, because I've done, both, and have found value with like learning myself in times when and the states that I've accessed through being drunk or drinking too much coffee. But I notice my best decisions, and when I say best, it's not because of better or worse. When I say best, I mean the things that I go, 6 months later, wow, my goodness, like I had such insight, and that was so pivotal about where that led me next. And I just, because that felt so good and I followed that, and oh my goodness, like I'm so pleased I did that because of where this has taken me. Like even this conversation now, like I'm so honored and excited to have connected with you and get to share in this conversation, which I feel is like so important to be having in our world. And this was birthed out of, oh, I like the feeling of this girl who's standing next to me at a smoothie bar in Thailand. You know, so just following that feeling ultimately has led to this conversation today, which makes me feel bright and alive and excited to be in the world. And those decisions that have the most vitality to them, if I look at them in my life and I look back, have come out of times when I'm most present to myself. And that has happened when I've had the least amount of substance in my system. So, and that's just an honest observation. And it's not just for me personally. I've witnessed it with thousands of people who've explored the same thing, and who are excited because of how they know they can trust themselves now. They can trust their instincts with something and know that it will lead them to like the next best thing, because they can feel, yeah, this is a yes. This is like a heck yes for me towards something, or a whoa, like, I need to change this. Something doesn't feel right. And that's all come from learning how to turn the volume up and down on being connected to their bodies.
So this is a current obsession of mine, which is the inner yes and no of the body. Because what I have noticed in my experience, because I became very interested in how we can be led to go to certain places, and then we'll meet certain people, and things seem very serendipitous. And that can come from a yes place in the body, but sometimes it can happen when you get a no, like, oh, I don't know if I should go there, and then something good still happens. So I'm really curious about how you navigate the hell yeses and the hell nos, and if there are gray spaces in between. And I think this is a question I'm going to ask everyone always until we figure it out, until we figure this one out.
So when I used to get a yes, it would be like a fizzy excitement yes. And I noticed if I ran away with it too much, I would end up getting like almost giddy, but giddy in a way that was not good. Like my brain would just be too fast. But if I followed the yes and was paced about it, and like kept checking in, like, how's this going? How am I feeling? Is this still a yes, or is this changed? As soon as I began to be a little slower with how I accepted the yes in my body, rather than like, I'm so excited, and like, I'm like zing myself up. But if I was like, oh my God, like if I took it down, I was like, oh my God, I am so excited. This is a yes. This is a yes. And I kept applying, like, you know, and following that yes with slow things rather than fizzy, crazy stuff. Because as you can tell, I have the propensity for both. And there's nothing wrong with either, but like the first one would mean I'd just burn out super fast. And then it would be like, I feel a bit flat now. And if something, I notice when there's big emotion with something. So if then something's a heck no, like there's two types of no. There's like oh, this is icky and I need to get gone out of here, like now, immediately. Like it's not even, I don't need to talk about it. I don't need to justify it. I just need to step away politely and kindly. Like I don't need to be horrible about it. There's never really any need for, you know, to be rude to people about a no. It's just a personal preference. So there's that kind of icky, I need to get out of there immediately. And then there's I need something, okay, I'm done. Like I'm quite in tune with I would say I'm an introvert. I'm very alive and love socializing, but I recharge when I'm by myself. And so for me, learning when I need to stop, and I need to stop being around people, is something I've observed for years, because it's taken me a while to figure out. Because I love sharing as well. I love interacting. I love conversations. But I get energy but when I'm by myself. So learning when to go, okay, yeah, I'm done now. And learning what that means in my body as a feeling. It's not a rejection, but it's okay, it's time to take some time alone now. That's how I found my pace and my rhythm in life, in a way that works for me, in a way where my energy is pretty consistent, and I'm excited about my life. And even when I have like really challenging things that come up, there's still a lot of energy there. There's still a lot of emotion there. And I always think, even if I'm having a really awful day, and it's, you know, I'm in the depths of whatever my mind might be chattering on about, or however I'm emotionally feeling in that moment, I still have enough perspective to feel excited that I can just feel. Like, I love that I can feel, because that to me reminds me I'm alive. That reminds me there's possibility. That reminds me of the potential of, like, this is going to be huge. Like, when I unpack whatever this is, like, whatever comes next is going to be like, wow. But it takes sometimes to go into that opening up to get to the wow on the other side. It's almost a bit like constipated energy, actually. So sometimes when it feels like a no, sometimes it's just you're unsticking something. It's not necessarily a no. It's a bit like, sorry, it's so crude, but it's a bit like when you go to the loo, like if you're going for a number 2, and you're constipated, like, you know, you need to go, but it's not happening.
This is really, you've nailed something that I think is super important, because sometimes, you know, for example, I was with my partner the other day. He had made a really beautiful VR application, wanted to show it to a very advanced teacher. He was afraid. I could see the no in his body as being connected to something that wasn't about his health. That was just about a belief system that was stuck, and that he needed a little bit of a kick to go to the next place. And so, as I think there are just many, many people who are in the phase now, should I leave my job? I think that's the biggest one. Yeah. If I'm going to name anything, if we're going to talk about 2 things today, and there's one last question I have for you beyond this, but if we're going to talk about a couple important things, one is, how do you let go of the food you don't really feel like you want to eat anymore, or the habit that's not serving you? And then so many of us are really struggling with work environment, right? So yeah, I'm noticing that.
I agree. I hear this a lot. And the biggest thing with that, so many people want to be somewhere else, right? Or they want their life to be something different. And all of that's like, the potential is completely there for them to do it. But again, I feel like I want to encourage people to ask, it's that same question. It's like, because normally with the job thing, it's, I want to be happier. I want to live a lifestyle that feels better, that, you know, allows me to have more freedom of time, or not be location dependent. But then there's this other voice of like, I need to be able to make money. I need to be secure. I need to be able to, you know, live in this world. Because I can't go to the supermarket and just say, hey, I'm living a location independent like lifestyle, feed me. Like, you have to have like both, you know. So again, it's that, you know, I would say sit down and journal, like, first of all, and figure out, first of all, what this voice is saying. Like, what are the dreams? What are the goals? What are the desires? What is it you're hoping for? And then look at what this voice is saying, the practical voice, like with what needs to be happening so that finances are okay or whatever, and begin to make friends with each other. And that doesn't mean compromise. What that means is, like, what are ways in which you can be location independent and be having the income that you need in order to be secure? And what you'll find is, as you begin to have these conversations, these two start to make friends. And then you begin to see how can I sidestep from the job that I'm currently in into the lifestyle that I'd like to be living. For some people, again, some people are quicker than others in terms of like jumping into, okay, I'm going to start this business and I'm going to do this and I can line this up and I have this person supporting me, and they will set things up super, super quickly. For me, I'm slow with how I do stuff. I'm slow, but I'm like a lorry. Like when I get there, I've brought a whole load of stuff with me, because I've been like planning the whole way along, but it's instinctual. It's not from a controlled place. It's like, this feels right. And then all of a sudden this bigger picture appears when I get to the other end of it. But for some people, they're quick with how they put stuff together, and neither's wrong or right. It's just go with what is right for you. And so they will be able to go, oh, and that's it. I'm quitting my job, but I'm stepping into this job, and that's it. I'm just starting. But I would actually say for a lot of people, and for longevity of something, so that something is created in an organic way, sometimes it's better to be slower and make sure that you segue well into the next thing, and that you've made, you've considered like what you want the lifestyle to be. Because some people think, I want to be location independent, I want to live this way, I want to do these things, but they're thinking it based on what they're watching other people do, not actually checking in with themselves and how they feel, and seeing like, does this really like make me feel amazing in myself? Like, does this feed me? Does this feed my creativity? Does this feed my vitality? Does this feed my relationships even? Like for me, I have a lot of family all over the world. So for me, travel is great because it means actually my connections are stronger for the traveling that I do, because I get to check in with all these people who I love and who I'm, either great friends with or connected through by blood. Whereas for some people, being away from their family, and traveling because their family is all in one area may not be the best thing for them, but they're not going to know that if they don't explore it a little bit. So this process of jobs and changing your business or, giving up your job, you've got to ask yourself, what's the dream? What are the things that your brain's going, I need to be practical around? But also you need to take some time to explore. If you think this is what you want, you need to like check in and like go and decide you're going to live in another country for 6 weeks or something, and see, how do you feel? Like, does this work for you? What are the things that you do in your day? Like what lights you up if you're by yourself? Is it the people that you are around that light you up? But you only know that when you take yourself away from the situation. Like, people have ideas and romantic notions about what it means to have a particular lifestyle. They have to actually find out for themselves. So I always feel like sidestepping into something's a good idea, whilst you figure stuff out. Eventually though, you do need to make the leap. It's the same with like sugar or coffee or habit. Eventually you're going to need to make the leap into, I'm going to trust that this is going to work, because I've prepared, and because I've set this up, and because I can see that it's working, and because I'm building it around what feels good.
And what I've also noticed as well is that, say you are cultivating a sparkling habit, so you're taking better care of your physical body because in order to, say, leave the job, a lot of us may start to go into planning mode, but that can make us more anxious and less comfortable in our bodies, and reaffirm
out of our mind,
right? And reaffirm the fact that we need to be someplace other than where we are. Mm-hmm. And so I think a really healthy transition, and perhaps to bring these two worlds together that we've been talking about, is care of the body in a way that has a few touchstone, most important, and I would actually argue, picking the area in you that is the most weak.
Yeah.
Right? So if you don't exercise and you need to, but you also know you need to quit coffee, but the food thing might not be that important. You might be pretty okay, but you don't move at all. You pick the weakest thing and put that in as a habit, because what I've noticed is where people, as a body worker myself, where we are the weakest and most vulnerable when stress starts coming in, that's where we start falling apart. And that's where we need the sparkling habit, not just as a way of polishing ourselves, but actually as a kind of foundation.
Absolutely.
For when things become difficult. Yeah. So this ground layer of, body as temple, then as the ideas and projections of the future, right? It's like almost like there's a skylight in a house and there's a looking at where you're going to be going. As this projection of the future comes forward, the temple feels good enough, and the planning and the working with the feelings around an issue allows transitions to new places to more easily occur. So it's not just, I read the 4-hour work week and now I need to go.
Now I need to go do that.
To do that, it's like take care of the temple, that would take care of the body, find the areas of yourself that need the most of your care, not because you're bad, but because we're all human. And this is
that's a transition.
Yes. So I really appreciate those two topics being placed next to each other, actually. The dreams we have and then the place that we already are.
Yeah, and I think I just feel as you're speaking there, like one of the reasons I feel it's such a big question that people have at the moment in terms of like, I need to change my job or whatever, it's just because we're living in really interesting times. There's some major things happening in our world on the kind of the big stage of life in terms of, and I'm not going to go into details because I don't think I need to, but in terms of politics or in terms of like what's happening for our environment or whatever, I think people are aware that purpose needs to be a big part of how they're living their lives. And so that question, like, what else should I be doing, is and the fact that so many people are having it is actually a sign of people beginning to go, okay, how can I take responsibility for my part in this world? And I think it's a great question, and I'm super excited that so many people are feeling so moved towards it. But I think that's why it's such a big question at the moment. So, and the more organic we are with how we approach it, and I don't mean necessarily in our shopping choices, I mean organic in our life choices and really considered in terms of what we do, the more impact we can have in the world. I'm always amazed when I go to really old estates in England or around the world, in fact, where people have maybe planted gardens or trees, and the vision that they've had for that garden or those trees is never something that gets realized in their lifetime. It only gets seen like maybe 100 or 200 years later, like the vision that they had. And I am always touched by how somebody could be so selfless to create something so magnificent and know that they will never have the opportunity to witness it. And it's one thing that I consider with a lot of the choices that I personally make. And again, everyone's different, but it's something that just really inspires me when I see things like that, because there are some things in our world that are truly magnificent in terms of the legacy that they're gifted with. And I feel we're at a stage as a collective that, because we have so many things available to us, if in terms of information, in terms of potential and possibility of what can be done, if people take the time to really feel into what feels important to them, I believe we have what it takes to make the change that we need to see in our world. But that comes through people really digging deep and knowing who they are and how they feel about things. So it's exciting where we're at the moment.
Right. And I feel like this, what I've noticed, if there's one phrase I've heard you say over and over again as I've known you, is it's exciting.
It is exciting.
No matter what it is. And what I'm feeling or what I'm sensing could be an important piece of change is to see the excitement in the discovery.
Yeah.
Because what I'm hearing you talk about the most, or what I feel like is part of your big sparkling habit, is that you're interested in tracking yourself. Supposedly on Buddha's deathbed, he said, that stay heedful, cultivate heedfulness or mindfulness. And that what the biggest thing you seem to be saying is, no matter what you've done, it's tracking, but not tracking in a way that includes judgment about whether you're good or bad, but tracking yourself in a way that says, oh, I know that there's always going to be a way for me to cultivate a new part of my internal garden. I know that there's probably weeding, and there's probably going to be some weeding, and there's probably going to be areas in my garden that are going to grow faster than others. And I think that your enthusiasm for life has a lot to do with that ability to track without an attachment to judging yourself. So I feel like that's an important thing that is something I've continued to learn from. And before we end, which is going to have to end soon.
I know.
Not really end. I mean, we're going to keep going.
I'm sure we'll touch in on this at another time again. But I have loved this conversation so much. Thank you so much for
it's so
for
good.
the joy and honor of being able to be with you with this.
It's so my pleasure. And I think before we go, I actually do want to leave like a little nugget about. Can you share with us why you think, as a body worker, how do you describe healing? How do you define healing?
Such an interesting question. So the one thing that really, I think, opened up body work for me, and was something that was made it something that was so important, was the idea and the reality that energy moves through our body, emotion moves through our body. Whether you want to call it energy or emotion, to me it's the same thing. And when emotion gets stuck in our body, or energy gets stuck in our body, other stuff gets stuck. And so to me, healing is not really about, I think sometimes people define healing as making something better. I see healing as just keeping everything moving. And encouraging it to keep moving. And so whether that's something that you do yourself, for yourself, and something I suggest you do for yourself and with yourself, or whether that's something you gain some support with because you can feel that something is a bit more stuck than another area and you can't quite figure out how to get it moving, and you seek out support from somebody else for that, whether that's a body worker or exercise class or yoga practice or like whatever it is. That's what I would say healing is. Healing is really just keeping things moving. And open. And so therefore there's nothing wrong with you, because I sometimes feel like healing, the idea of healing sometimes implies there has to be a problem and therefore there's something wrong with you. There just isn't. It's just like anything. Like if you're cleaning a house, like sometimes you do a light clean, sometimes it needs a deeper clean, sometimes you just need help with that. There's no bad or wrong with any of it. It's just a different level of experience, and it's also all only research. Like we punish ourselves and think, oh, I need to do better, or this isn't a good enough job, or I should be able to do this. Why am I needing to ask for help with this? But like it's all research and learning ourselves. The whole process, it's all just a discovery. And if you can keep that in mind as you're going, it becomes easier to keep moving, because each time we then go into, oh God, I've, really messed up this time. Or I'm so stupid, or why can they do it and I can't? What's wrong with me? Like as soon as you get into those things stop and cut off and compound and push down that movement in you, because you're in punishment mode. Whereas the question of, oh wow, oh wow, okay, yep, this is stuck, I need some help, like I can't move, and you get the help that you need, then you can like expand and open out and explore, and then you're like, oh, I can know myself in a different way now, because I can see things in a different way, I can look at things in a different way. So it's all, healing is all only really about opening.
It's almost like the energy that the way you did this movement, it was almost like we're going to grow anyway.
Yeah.
And this moment where things feel like they're stuck is pretty much it's like a temporary moment, because, you know, human life is pretty fleeting. But this moment that we're in, where we feel the confines of, you know, we feel more limitation or more pressure, that healing itself, and what you're suggesting is noticing the distinction between what it feels like to be in movement and to not be continuing to move, and whatever it takes for us to feel a continuation of movement includes self-love, self-care, which I hear you saying, but it also includes just an awareness that any positive deed, pretty much most things, will get you towards that point, especially when we apply our attention to it.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I felt that there's an inevitability to healing, like an inevitability to growing.
Absolutely.
Right.
I love that. It's a really nice way of putting it. An inevitability to healing. I love that. You need to quote yourself, Suzanne.
Oh, we're recorded, so I think we're doing good. So thank you so much, Savannah, for allowing me to ask you the questions about these essential pieces of growing. Yeah.
Thank you for the joy of exploring this with you, always and any time. It's my honor and pleasure, and I'm sure we will get to play like this a lot more. Thank you.
Me too. Thank you, Savannah. Okay. Beautiful.